Good morning, everyone. Today, on the sixth episode of Decoding Elections, I have with me the man who needs no intro. He is the inventor, entrepreneur, engineer, writer, Padma Bhushan, and whatnot. Father of telecom revolution in India, scientist, and a man who has hundreds of patents to him. If I go by his looks, then he resembles to me like his hero that has been his Einstein. If I go by his work, he has done what Bill Gates is doing today. I mean, long back, if you go for the vaccination program that Bill Gates is working on today, he worked long back, 20 to 25 years back. And then if you go by the water, providing safe water, if you go by literacy, these are all the works that are accredited to Mr. Sam Pitroda, sir. And if you go by his work, to me, he's like Bill Gates minus the money. I don't know about that. And if I
You
go
can
by
say that again.
and if I go by what Gandhiji says, then, sir, I feel that when Gandhiji met Firoz Gandhi, he said, if I had more of Firoz, I would, free India in a very short span. So if India had more of Sam Pitrodas, so what could not have been achieved by now? We share two things together. First is, sir, the love for Mother Nation, and the second is the goatee that I kept it for this episode for you, sir. Welcome to the sixth episode of Decoding Elections, sir.
Thank you very much, Mayank. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for very generous comments.
Sir, your new book, Redesign the World. Sir, because it is first time that an Indian has taken an initiative to tell the world that a redesigning has to be done. So what is it about? Can you please tell us in brief?
Well, the book is about redesigning the world. World was last designed just about the time I was born in 1942. This design was primarily led by the US and Western world. The design gave birth to UN, World Bank, NATO, WTO, WHO, measurements, and all kinds of things. That design was based on democracy, human rights, capitalism, consumption, and military. Then world was bipolar. There was the Soviet Union and there was United States. And people had to take side almost. And that's when Nehru and others started non-aligned movement. This design worked well to bring about peace, rebuild after World War, Europe, Japan, and other countries, and created rule-based system. I think that's a great contribution from American democracy, that the world follows certain norms and standards and processes. 75 years down the road, I find that that design doesn't work anymore. That design does not work because several key things happened right after the design. First, Mahatma Gandhi-led independence movement in India decolonized the entire world. No one had thought that the world will be decolonized in 25 years. And that decolonization created millions of people with new hopes. I always give this example that my father, who had fourth grade education, would have never thought that his children could go to college in British Raj. In independence India, he could think that way because he felt he's empowered. And this happened to millions of people. Then came rise of China. No one had thought China will rise the way China has been able to rise in the last 30 years. Then breakup of Soviet Union. Rise of technology. Transistor was born after the design was conceived. Rise of technology also created inequality. Very few people became very rich and lots of people remained poor. Then came 9/11, which was a response to a unipolar world. and finally COVID-19. These 7 events give us an opportunity to rethink through. One, appreciate the design, and two, build on it to take humanity to the next level. We have solved a lot of problems in terms of building democracy, reducing poverty, improving infant mortality, longevity. But at the same time, we have not solved many problems related to poverty, hunger, terror, and all that. Unfortunately, in the last 75 years, we have not created any new institutions of that order. And I believe it is time to rethink through this. I come from the viewpoint of connectivity. I believe hyperconnectivity is changing everything we do. It is changing medicine, education, politics, governance, business, markets, finance. For the first time in the human history, we are all connected. What does this connectivity mean? Is this connectivity only to do things better, cheaper, or is this connectivity there to do new things that we have never done in our life? I think that's a fundamental question from where I come from. Saying it's one thing to use hyperconnectivity to reduce cost, improve market, increase profit. But is there a way to use this hyperconnectivity to do things we have never even thought of doing? And that question led me to this idea of redesign. And at 79, I thought I need to look at world a little differently. So when I mapped my journey from a small little tribal village in Orissa to get a degree in physics, come to America 55 years ago, and then go back and forth and work in both democracies. I'm an Indian and I'm an American. I'm a scientist, I'm a father, I'm a thinker, I paint, so I do lots of things. I have multiple identities. And I realized that this journey of my own ought to be an anchor point to understand what happened and see what I can propose. You know, I have 3 grandchildren. And I always feel that my grandparents gave me a world which was simple, poor, but clean. We didn't have much, but we all thought Gandhian thought. Simplicity, love, truth, trust, inclusion, diversity. I'm giving to my grandchildren a world that is richer, polluted, and very complex. So I decided to write this book with this kind of a background. And COVID-19 gave me an opportunity because I was locked up at home for almost 13 months. I did not leave my house at all. Didn't drive a car. Somebody dropped off groceries, and my wife and I locked up because our children wanted to make sure that we don't go out. They are in California.
Sir,
and we thought this would be a good time to use to write something up.
Sir, now that you have a very futuristic thoughts, I wanted to ask you, I've been asking all my readers, how is politics going to be in the future, sir? See, because now those mass rallies due to Corona, there was recent controversy in which the leaders were held accountable by the people. And fortunately, Rahul Gandhi was the first one to cancel all his rallies, right? But others weren't. And then later on, everyone followed. So in future, sir, how do you think that politics is going to be?
I believe politics will change considerably because of hyperconnectivity. Hyperconnectivity brings about democratization, decentralization, and demonetization. It brings about democratization because now in my hand, I have a tool to empower me. I can learn. Let's say I found out that you are a orthopedic surgeon, and I need to learn about what is orthopedic surgeon. What does it do? What are the things? I can just learn today. I don't need to ask anybody. That power of learning is the key to thriving democracy. So hyperconnectivity is going to change democracy completely, because
So
it
do
is
you
going
think
to
that there
empower
are,
every individual.
sir, do you think then there are not going to be any more rallies physically and they're going to be more digitally?
If I had an option, I would do all the voting on cell phone. We know how to do it. It is much more secure than existing voting machine and EVM and all that. Okay, that's a technology of the past. It is obsolete. It has a lot of problems, and it has created huge amount of controversy. It's obsolete
So
because
I was coming to this question.
by doing this, I already have a patent on it.
Sir, yes,
Okay,
this is
by
a
doing
very
this, you are
futuristic
empowering
approach.
voting.
Okay.
What it means is you don't need booth. You don't need police. You don't need to wait in line. You don't need to go there physically to vote. Okay. So that's one major change I see coming.
And plus,
Question is
people can vote from outside the country as well.
wherever. If you are qualified, you can vote, and you give you time, a week to vote. That's one. Two, if I had an option, I will ban all rallies. I will also ban advertising on TV, because that's where most of the expense goes. People spend millions of dollars in unnecessary advertising, promotion. If you have something to say it on your website, say it on your social media, and everybody will have access to it. Don't underestimate the power of hyperconnectivity. And then democracy will also change in a sense that I don't need to vote one person in my constituency and have him go to Delhi and represent me. I mean, that's an old model. Okay. Why should I have him vote for all our issues in Delhi on our behalf? We should be able to participate on an issue. Okay. So I think the nature of democracy is going to change substantially, but it will take time. Okay.
So, but there's one problem. Now that, sir, there's a quotation in superheroes that says, "With great power comes great responsibility." But similarly, with greater use of technology, comes greater efforts to con the technology. That happened in fake news. That's happening. Lies are being spread, and sir, don't you think that just because everything will be dependent on technology, there will be more chances of rigging the entire systems?
No, I think, first of all, it is not technology, it is a tool. So let's understand a big difference. It's a tool to do things better. Anything that is a tool can be misused, and we have to prevent and monitor and manage misuse of the tool. If 5% misuse, you cannot deprive 95% of the utility of the tool. Okay. There'll be some knee-jerk reaction. There'll be some perturbations. There'll be some problems. But I'm looking at the long term. It is like, when computers came to India, people said, what is this? These people are crazy. I remember in 80s when Rajiv Gandhi and I, and many of us promoted computers. They thought, these guys are crazy. India doesn't need computer. Okay. India doesn't need telephone in villages. Okay. So everything new starts with that negativity. Start with the suspicion. And first failure, people start pointing fingers at you, saying, see, we told you it won't work. And then when it works, they'll all turn around and say, we told you it will work. So that's the process you have to go through. Okay.
Okay, sir, now that I was asking you, the redesigning of the world is going on, sir. And when the redesigning of the world is going on, many new firsts are coming. Suppose if you say that one nation, one election is a brainchild, and like cryptocurrency is coming. cryptocurrency is like used by some secret society. They feel that there will be one government in the world, there will be one currency. So do you think for India, one nation, one election, do you think the possibility of this happening, or how do you think will this benefit or not benefit this?
I think the idea is to decentralize everything and not centralize. One nation, one election is all about centralization. I believe we need further decentralization. We need democratization. And that's what hyperconnectivity offers. So I would be against centralizing anything: education, health, voting, elections, policy making. Okay. I think we need to push things down to district levels. If I had an option, I would run India like 650 different districts with their own government, own autonomy, own politics, own language, own budget, own plans. 2 million people is a good enough community to plan. They should have their own hospitals. They should have their own universities. They should have their own water. And there is no need for center to get involved in micromanaging every district. There are things states can do. There are things centers can do. So one is complete decentralization all the way to district level. And two, bottom-up development and not top-down. Don't worry about big industries going to district. Worry about small entrepreneurs. Worry about empowering farmers. Worry about empowering local teacher, local doctor, local hospital. And really network small businesses to become big. I think it's a completely different model. And that is what Gandhiji also promoted at one time. And I think it is possible to do that now because of hyperconnectivity.
Sir, you have spoken about two of the main things that you believe are going to shape the world. That is planet, and the other was people. But because I am a student of politics, sir, and I wanted your views on politics, so I wanted to ask the candidate selection in the future. So because what is very different when it comes to candidate selection in India is when I see America's Got Talent, right? They choose the best candidate, right? They give them an opportunity, but that doesn't happen in politics. Like the angel investors, okay, they ask a person to pitch for ideas. There's a panel that sits down, they chooses, right? So that is more of decentralization, and the idea has come now that because you are a chairman of one of the wings of India's oldest party, do you think that this can anytime happen soon and make more decentralization into politics, because most of the people who contest elections are somehow from those backgrounds and the power is centralized in politics?
It should be decentralized. I agree. See, when you believe in the concept of decentralization, you believe everywhere and not selectively. Okay, it should be decentralized as much as possible. Agree?
Sir, you have previously spoken about position of India in the new world order. I was reading you a lot and you said that, there are two views. One is the USA view, the other is China view. What the world right now needs is a Gandhian view with non-violence and inclusivity of every country, every nation. That's the third view that you presented, right, sir? But now coming to politics, sir, I feel that, because Congress was the center of politics so far in India, but now what do you think is the position of Congress in Indian politics in the future that you feel has, because it is
I did not write this book for Congress or India. That's not my goal. This book is about global outlook. This book is about redesigning the world and not redesigning Congress party or redesigning India. So I don't think that question really applies to this conversation. Okay. Sir, I do agree that the world needs focus on planet and people. There are two designs in front of us or on the table today. American design based on the 75-year-old 5 pillars, which is a good design, focused on democracy, human rights, capitalism, consumption, and military. And there is a Chinese design because of the new power and new prosperity China has achieved. It is based on Belt and Road Initiative. It is based on Chinese new power. What world needs is the third design, which is not American, not Chinese, but it's a design based on networking of nations. And I think US has started talking about that to some extent. And I'm glad US is taking the lead, and US must take the lead. Because we need to build on what we already have. But that design has to be based on partnership, networking, equality. And that design has to focus on planet and people everywhere. Not just in America, or not just in China, or not just in India. I mean, look at Africa. It is going to be a huge challenge in the next 20 years to focus on Africa's development. Because world population is going to change substantially, and African population is going to be the biggest increase in population. Huge increase. And if we don't focus on Africa's development, that's going to be a pressure on the rest of the world.
You mean the rest of the world has to focus on the development of Africa?
Of course. Of course. Because Africa is part of the, increasing population. Why did America focus on building Europe? Why did America focus on building Japan and, Asian tigers? Okay. So world will have to focus on building Africa.
So, sir, there's other thing that I am reading these days, and it says your screen is more dangerous than a weapon. Okay, and with the advent of technology and screen time is coming digital well-being, sir, and digital mental health. What's your take on technology and digital well-being, sir?
Well, there is more to well-being than digital. Well-being begins with taking care of yourself. What you eat, how much you sleep, your mental balance, family, environment. All of these things are part of well-being. Your weight control. Then comes digital well-being. Digital well-being is all about what do you see and how much time you spend on the screen. It's up to you. You decide, I mean, I get on screen sometimes for 10 hours a day, but then I take a break and walk. On an average day, I would be on computer for maybe 14 hours every day.
14 hours?
Every day. Okay. I get 500 emails a day. Humanly, I'm not capable of handling it.
Sir, I have read a lot about you, and then I read your take on the data policy, right? So there are two problems before India. One was that suppose the new movie was released, and in which that movie, a person is taking his time to prove that he is actually born, he's not died, which on papers he had died long back, and his relatives had captured his ancestral land. Okay, this was a movie by name as Kagaz, just released 6-7 months back. So now that we are so much onto the tools of social media, that our digital identity is at a risk. Okay, and we as a physical human beings are different, and our digital identities are yet managed and controlled by people. Sir, so what's your take on this, and how should an individual or the government try to protect the digital identity of the nation's individuals?
I think it's like anything. It is not just digital identity. It is passport. It is driver's license. Okay, there are multiple identities. First of all, there is no one identity. I don't like this idea of consolidating identity. Again, decentralization comes in. I have multiple identity. I'm an engineer. Like I said earlier, I'm a father, I'm a painter, I'm, ordinary, worker. I'm lots of things. So my identity also relates to all that. My membership in the Society of Engineers, my driver's license, my passport, my land record, whatever it is. So don't expect one identity.
Sir, another question that I wanted to ask is, sir, see, you no doubt had something very different to you, and you had the opportunity to implement that into the people of India and build India, right, sir? And then again, in Manmohan Singh's reign, also you had to uh, implement what you had in your mind. So I wanted to ask, sir, how did you survive in the corridors of power? Because according to Napoleon Hill, if I go, a person needs to have more than talent, and that has to be a pleasing personality as well, right? On how he can get along with everyone else, and being an outsider when you came in the corridors of power. So how did you survive in those corridors with balance of between people who were close or closer, and and still maintain and still implement? Because not every talent gets the opportunity to show cause itself.
See, part of the talent has to be some amount of quality to execute. If there is a talent that cannot execute, that's like unpolished diamond. When someone says, I have talent to do this, I want that person also to have talent to execute. If you look at the recent history of India, many things got done. I shouldn't say, only these 5 things got done, but I focus on 5 things: atomic energy, Bhabha, and Nehru. Space, Vikram Sarabhai, this is Indira Gandhi. Green Revolution, Swaminathan, Dr. Rao, Dr. Randhawa, and others, and Mrs. Gandhi. Dr. Kurian, Milk Revolution, and Telecom Revolution with Rajiv Gandhi. Why these 5 things got done? Because you had a domain expert with political will and a leadership quality who could communicate, articulate, was selfless, committed to nation building. You need all of these qualities to get things done, unfortunately. It is not only true in India, it is true everywhere. So the ability to get things done is important as part of the process. You can't say, I have a great idea, but nobody's giving an opportunity. You have to create opportunity. You have to grab the canvas and you have to start painting. And people will watch, people will support. So don't blame anybody else. People are quick to blame, saying, oh, system is bad, I can't do this, I can't do that. No, you are not creating the ecosystem to respond to the existing system.
Okay.
You got to work with what you got. You're given that environment. People will fight new ideas. Okay. People will undermine your initiative. That's all given. And if you are afraid of that, nothing will happen.
Sir, you have spoken about Ministry of Non-Violence. I mean, do you think that's a futuristic thing that any country needs to have? Because I personally, sir, do not like the rivalry between countries. And you said that there is abundance of resources for every one of us, right? We do not need to eliminate the other to enjoy the abundance of life. And so do you think that, on Gandhian principles, there should be a Ministry of Non-Violence as well?
I strongly believe. I believe that the world needs to focus on non-violence. The business of fighting is enough. But non-violence has to begin at home. It has to begin in the family, community, on the streets, cities, and then between nations. Look at the amount of money we spend on defense equipment. We spend about $2 trillion a year on defense. Can we use most of that for human development? I mean, why do you have to fight? I don't get it. Why can't the world community come together against anybody who is fighting? But we create fights to sell arms sometimes. We create fights to acquire, resources. I think that's an old model, old mindset. It comes from the tribal mentality that I got to conquer. But that's how the world was built. If you look at how the world was built, Britishers came to India to conquer, so they could capture resources. They went to Africa for same. White people from Europe came to America and grab all the lands from local people, kill them, and now it is a new country. So everything in the past was based on fights. I think now we have matured to a point as human civilization. We can deal with conflicts on table with a conversation, logic, rationality, scientific mindset, and community of nations coming together to support negotiations. And I'm confident that we can build a non-violence world, but we got to start somewhere.
Sir, how can technology and this redesigned world of yours, how can technology be used in this world to prevent corruption? Because that's the very basic, greed is the basic human nature, right?
Well, I don't agree that it is basic human nature. We have made it as a basic human nature. Basic human nature is to love. Basic human nature is to be nice to everybody. Basic human nature is to support. Basic human nature is not to have greed. But some people have made that a prime objective. Okay. And we must also recognize that rich people are not necessarily happy people. Money cannot buy happiness. It can buy lots of things. Okay. So it all depends on what you value at the end of the day. If you value only money, there is nothing I can do about it. That's your privilege. That's your freedom. Okay.
Sir,
so I think it's up to individual to decide what is important to them.
Sir, I have been reading your idea that in the future there are going to be no cars. People are going to work for 10 hours and enjoy the luxuries of life, right, sir? So in a way, how are we then going to generate employment? Because employment, no doubt, I've heard, is going to go down, right, sir? Because of too much of technology dependence.
First of all, the idea of employment, where you have 40 hours of work a week to survive, and then retirement benefit, pension, I think that model is about to die. In my generation, you could work for one company for the rest of your life. You could be in one field as an electrical engineer and die as an electrical engineer. That is going to be over. Okay, you will need multidisciplinary approach. You will need to change jobs and do multiple things. And when machines take over, most of the routine work will be still work for people. But it may not be job as you and I have defined. Will be work. So let's not confuse work with job. I don't have a job. I haven't had a job since 1979. But I have work. Okay, I came to India to fix India's telecom. Was not a job to me. It was a work to me. Nobody gave me a job. Okay, I don't have a job now. Nobody gave me a job to write a book. It was work. So I think we need to define work as the objective and not job. You may have to work 10 hours as a job to make living, but you still will spend time in gardening, traveling, reading, writing, communicating with people, exploring, making your bed, cleaning your house. That's all work. Okay? I'll give you a simple example. In 60s, as a young man in America, we were poor, so we had to buy used cars. Okay. And a lot of our time was spent on fixing cars. It won't start during winter, you know, because winter is too cold. We didn't have parking. It was outside. And the amount of time we spent on car was huge. You know, go to garage, get this fixed, belt fell down, carburetor is bad. Now, for last 10 years, I don't think I've ever been to car repair guy. Never. Car doesn't need anything. Okay, it's so well built that you don't need any servicing except change oil once in a while. Okay.
Sir, it is for this reason that you believe that humans may live up to 150 years because they'll enjoy the luxuries of life?
No, I think they will live up to 150 years because of people like you.
Why, sir?
Doctors. You are doing so much work for humanity because what you do for one person applies to the whole humanity. See, that's the beauty of science. In science, the truth that you discover applies to the whole humanity. In orthopedic surgery, you may come up with one little process, whatever it is. And once that is new and perfect, boom, all 8 billion people can benefit from it.
Yes, yes. That's...
Okay. So the work you all do in biotech, nanotech, materials, in genetics, in, all kinds of other things will help humanity. Look, I'm 79 and I feel like I'm 30-year-old. Okay. Thanks to you all, because I had 2 quadruple bypasses.
Yes.
I have 8 stents. I had cancer and I'm perfectly good. I wouldn't be here if you all, as doctors, didn't do your job right. I'm here because of medicine development, because of doctors and all that. So I'm saying by the time you get into trouble, which is another maybe 40, 50 years, technology would have advanced to a point they'll replace every body part of yours. They will figure out more about aging genes. They'll do gene manipulating to make sure that your hair doesn't get like mine white. It will always remain black. They'll figure that out. I'm confident. I went through cataract surgery, in both eyes. And I tell you, they planted certain lens and all. And I said, "God, you could see so well." I had no idea. Because over a time, my eyes had sort of, fogged and I was comfortable. But when I went through this and got 20/20 vision, I said, "Oh my God, is this how world looks like?" Look at all my walls are clean, all my paintings are clean. And my doctor said, "No, that's 20/20 vision you got from cataract." Now, my grandfather had a cataract. Poor fellow, he didn't get the benefit of it.
Oh.
You see, this is a simple example. So all of this is going to happen. My grandfather lost his teeth at the age of 55. I'm 79 and it's all perfect. No problem. Thanks to technology.
Sir, thank you. I will take the compliment on behalf of my colleagues and whosoever has operated on you.
So we thank you all for what you do for all of us.
Thank you so
in
much.
every corner of the world. Look at this in Corona crisis. The warriors are doctors and nurses and, paramedical workers. I mean,
Yes.
they are on the front line.
Sir, you have had experiences on vaccinating, So, in brief, in quick, sir, because I want to know your experience, past experience on vaccination, and how can we implement that today, right, sir, in a faster way? Because at vaccination, we are far behind and lagging.
See, Rajiv Gandhi was focused on immunization program. As part of a technology mission, I was in charge of immunization in 87. And I learned a lot on polio vaccine. And we decided in Rajiv Gandhi's time to really manufacture vaccine locally in India. So that was made in India, indigenous development, because we had the largest number of polio patients in the world. Then India did not make any vaccine. Today, we are the largest producer of vaccine. Similar to telecom, then we had 2 million telephones. And today we have 1.2 billion phones. And India is a nation of connected billion. So vaccine is all about logistics. It's all about entire complicated process where production is one item, a small piece of the puzzle. Delivery, distribution, documentation, all that is fairly complicated stuff. Nowadays in 80s, cold chain was the biggest challenge. How do you establish a cold chain in a complex country like India with lots of villages, lack of discipline, okay, lack of transportation? So even if you produce cold chain equipment, how do you deliver to people? How do you maintain when there is no power? Okay. So these are all complex logistics problems. I think we have difficulty today in vaccination, not because technically we are not competent, not because we can't produce enough vaccine. One, we didn't plan properly. And two, the logistics didn't get the attention it deserves. It's all details. It's all about, we always say, devil is in the details. Here also, devil is in details. You can do it. That's not a problem. Yeah? We have huge amount of talent in India. We have lots of capable people like you all. Okay? We have to empower them. We have to depoliticize this process. Okay, we have to let it run by domain experts and not by political bosses.
Depoliticize is the right word that you use, sir, because recently the vaccine maker in India has got into some political controversy and he has left country. So I really agree with that. Sir, there's one more controversy that nobody has addressed so far in India. So there's a controversy. I don't know that you have heard about it or not. So there's a controversy that's going on that this COVID acceleration in the air is due to 5G testing. Okay, so there are posts which says, I don't know how true it is or not, because since you are from...
Not true.
Not true?
Not true.
Okay. So have you heard about this controversy that's going on, sir?
No, I've heard somebody tell me, but that's all bogus.
Okay.
The real super spreader was election,
Okay.
rallies where you have hundreds of thousands of people coming together. Prime Minister of India not wearing mask, sending message that it's okay, we are all safe, go do whatever you want to do. It's a signal unconsciously he gave.
Yes.
I don't think he meant to do that, but it happened. And then Kumbh Mela. In addition, lack of discipline. And then it gets compounded by the fact that in India, you cannot isolate well because people live in joint families. Poor people live in a small little space with 4, 5, 8 people together. So when you put all of these things together, elections, Kumbh Mela, ability to sort of have discipline, to follow instructions, difficulty in isolating people, complications with social distancing, wearing masks, you add all of this and you have explosion. And that's what happened. And the numbers we are given are really not true, are not proper. It's very simple. I'm told, and it may not be exact number, that every day we lose 30,000 people in the country.
Before COVID?
30,000 people. Huh?
This is without
regular
COVID.
death. No, regular death.
Okay.
Regular death per day is 30,000, I'm told. And we can calculate it because, the population of 1 billion and, 20 million people dying per day, per year or whatever, we can calculate that. Let's assume that it is 30,000. Okay. Now we have funeral facilities for 30,000 people in the country, which is routine. People go to, cremation ground or burial and, it happens. Now all of a sudden there are lines after lines. If you only had 3,000 deaths more per day, that is only 10% increase. If you have 10% increase, you do not need line. Just think of it. Okay. As an engineer, I'm just observing this. And I'm saying, wait a minute. If it is only 10% increase in the death because of COVID, which is a small number, you cannot have this kind of a jam in cremation. So the number is not right, period. Now you prove me wrong. Okay.
No, I cannot prove you wrong.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's how you have to think. I'm not saying I'm right and somebody else is wrong. I'm saying your logic should take you to that conclusion.
Sir, I agree with this thought of yours. Now, one more question, sir, because you are very proud, and everybody should be when it says that, that you are son of a carpenter, right?
Yeah,
Yes. And now you said that, your caste ceased to be when you became an engineer, a scientist, right? So I wanted to ask, sir, what will be the role of technology in removing this caste untouchability that's there? And why are political parties, when you say that, caste ceased to be, why are political parties still focused on, the caste equations when it comes to elections?
See, I can't advise them. All I can do is advise myself. And I'm saying nobody's going to discriminate me. I'm not going to allow them to discriminate. Like nobody can insult me, only I can insult myself. Okay. Nobody's going to hurt me because only I can hurt myself. Okay. So I may be Dalit, I may be carpenter. I'm going to decide that I am a proud son of whatever I have in my heritage. And I'm not going to allow anybody to discriminate me. I live in a democracy. I have certain rights. I will demand those rights. If enough of us did that, rather than complaining about how they are treated, we'll be okay. It's
So
like a satyagraha.
how can technology, prevent caste discrimination, sir?
Technology is just a tool. You decide. You don't need technology to worry about that.
Okay.
Okay. Technology is a tool to do your job. Okay. Caste discrimination is in your mind. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's in your mind. Okay. You decide that you want to be discriminated, you'll be discriminated. You decide that you are not going to be discriminated, you're going to fight that, you'll fight that.
Okay. And you're going to fight that using technology as a tool, right?
Technology is a tool to do lots of things.
Yes.
Okay. I can't say this is my tool to fight discrimination. No. This is my tool to educate myself. Education would help me fight discrimination. This is my tool to do many other things. Okay.
Okay, sir. I agree. To the point, I have tried to understand most of what I wanted to understand, sir. Right. And most of I have already read and known. So I try to focus on things that, I wanted to know personally from you, sir. But there are few things that are still not in the public domain of the great thinker that you are, sir. So I would want to begin with a rapid fire round. It's more of a personal, non-political question and answer session, sir. Okay. Your spiritual mentor.
Gandhi and Einstein.
Sir, there is a similarity between you and Einstein, not other than the hairstyle, because Einstein used to play a violin. Do you know that? And being a thinker, you paint. So do you think that every, great brain has something to do? Because I have seen you doodling a lot, right? And painting a lot. So do you think that's one of your hobbies, like Einstein had his of playing a violin?
Well, as a child living in boarding school, I learned lots of things. credit goes to my teachers in those days. I learned to play tabla. I play tabla even now. I learned to play dilruba, and I learned to play paintings. And I always wanted multiple identity, unconsciously.
Okay.
You know, so I paint. I have in my house about 300 paintings of my own, hanging all over. And I love music.
Sir,
Okay,
what do you
but
do? What do you do with those paintings now that you have painted them, those 300 paintings? Because after someday, what do you wish to do with them? Do you, other than the exhibition, do you sell them online too?
no, I don't sell them. You know, I sold one painting because somebody desperately wanted it, but I don't sell paintings. I would probably put it in a trust. You know, when I have 1,000 paintings, I want to do 1,000 paintings. I have probably close to 5 to 10,000 doodles.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. For example, just to give an idea, you know, well, it's a little complicated, but it's on my desk. I do a lot of doodles.
Okay. Sir, that you see in the background are my calligraphy things also, sir. So suppose I got those 48 laws of power, right? So I got how to win friends laws. So I have this letter from Abraham Lincoln that he wrote to his headmaster's teacher, right?
Mhm.
So that's like an inspiration, sir, from you. Okay. Now that you have spoken about that you are 14 hours screen time that you have at days, or what is the content that you consume? Who's your favorite speaker, or who's your favorite YouTuber, or what is the favorite series that you watch?
Yeah, I don't do those kinds of things. You know, I it's a different approach to media. Okay. I'm on Zoom calls, doing a lot of board meetings, discussions, and coordination. I spend very little time on social media. I don't follow too many people. I read Wall Street Journal regularly.
Okay.
I read Economist regularly.
You are the paid member of Wall Street Journal, sir?
Yes,
And
and Economist.
the Economist.
And those two are important to me because I get a lot of interesting material from there. Then I also subscribe to New Yorker.
Subscribe to New
New
Yorker.
Yorker.
Okay.
New Yorker is a magazine,
Okay.
very interesting magazine. I like that.
It's
So
like
these are
the
the
Reader's
three.
Digest of that place.
Yeah, so I like those three magazines. Again, three, and that gives me good global overview. Okay.
Sir, best book.
I don't watch news except PBS,
Okay.
Public Broadcast System. I watch that news. I don't see movies at all. At all. I have no time to see movies. I haven't seen Indian movie in last 50 years. So I don't know who all these actors are. I have no idea. I don't take interest in any sports. I'm not a big sports fan anymore. I used to be when I was young. And that's my life. I'm using
Okay.
computer
Sir,
for
your
my
best book.
I don't read many books.
Okay.
I read a
Best
lot of
author.
magazines. I don't read except Gandhi. Gandhi
Sir,
is my best author.
Sir Gandhi's best quotation.
Oh, many. Be the change you want to be.
Yes. Okay.
You will see in my book many quotations from Gandhiji and Einstein.
Okay. So I presume you might be a vegetarian as well, are you, sir?
No, I used to be vegetarian, but I eat everything. Everything.
Okay, sir. The gadgets you use,
My phone.
I mean, what particularly?
Everything. My
No,
phone for
no,
message.
no. I said no. What model phone that you use? Are you particular brand oriented when it comes to your gadget?
No, my office decides, and they just when the new phone comes, they give me a new phone.
Okay.
Coding and all that. I don't do anything. My office says, okay, the new phone has come. Here is your new phone. Everything has been loaded on new phone, and so I use new phone. I don't.
Is it an Apple or a Android?
I have Apple. Everything is Apple.
Okay. You are the part of Apple
Laptop, phone.
ecosystem.
Yeah, for a
Okay,
long
sir.
time.
So your wake up time?
6:30,
Sleeping time?
12.
Okay. Morning routine?
Morning routine. First get up, make bed, brush your teeth, come down, make tea, have tea, and then get on phone to see your overnight messages on laptop. And then around 8, start normal meetings. This is my home office. So I
Okay.
enter this office around 8. I get out about 12:30, walk a little bit around kitchen, make lunch. And since I am at home, I do all the cooking now because my wife has done it for all her life. So I told her that it's time for you to rest a little bit. So I make lunch, then two of us would eat, then I come back in the office and work. Then I'll get up, I get out at 6 to watch news. From 6 to 7, I'll watch PBS as much as possible. Sometimes while watching, I'll walk around the house. So I get to walk about 30, 40 minutes a day. And then I'll cook. Then we'll have dinner. My wife would be watching TV and I'll sit with her and I'll do my work.
So you are the one who cooks.
Right now, I'm the one who cooks because she cooked all her life.
Okay. Sir, regrets from life?
Nothing. No regrets. Had a wonderful life. Married to the girlfriend of mine.
Something that you feel that you should have done or something that you missed out on, anything? Any
I
past
wish
college crushes?
No. This girl was the only crush, and I married her, and here is she, when she was young.
Yes.
Okay, and I have wonderful 2 kids, great kids. I have a son who went to MIT, went to Harvard,
Yes.
is a venture capitalist. I have a daughter who went to Michigan and makes movies in Hollywood. She went to London Business School. I have wonderful grandchildren. No complaints at all.
So you no doubt have a very beautiful family, sir. I would like to congratulate on the wise decisions that you made, sir. Okay. So weirdest request or phone call that you have received, if you can remember.
Well, weirdest would be some strange people would ask for lots of money, saying, "Help me, sir. I need only 50 lakh rupees." I mean, it's a crazy world.
What do you say? I'm just sending. Wait.
No, I wish I could say that. I'm not that rich, So
But
I
the
would say,
the society presumes you to be.
yeah, but that's their privilege.
Okay. Best story. If you have any best story from anybody.
No, my father used to tell us very interesting stories. One story that I wrote in my autobiography was that my father was told that there is a thing called train in a village.
Train.
Train. Where big black engine comes in front and brings lots of people to station. And he could not visualize because he had never been out of this little village
Okay.
in Gujarat. And he thought it would be a bunch of buffaloes tied.
Okay.
So the guy said, no, it has some, smoke coming out.
Okay.
So he was a young kid and he said, this thing has to be seen. He said, I have to see this. So he and his friend ran 10 kilometers to see this thing that was described as a train and asked people, and they said, go to station. So they went to station as 2 little kids just waiting. And when the train came, they were visualizing what it would be.
Okay.
Okay. And when train came, train put a whistle and they were scared to death.
Okay. They were scared.
They were scared. They ran saying, this is a monster. And when then train stopped, they went to see it. They couldn't believe that this is a black thing, little engine, and people have benches to sit. And they were fascinated with this idea of the train. And my father told me this story, and I thought that was a very interesting story. And then they came back running around and got beating from the teacher because they didn't go to school that day.
So there's one question I wanted to ask, because you are the czar of technology, right, sir? And I wanted to ask that when the tenure of UP2 was finishing, and there were a lot of fake news that was going around, did Congress or the government at that time fail to curb them, the rise of social media? Because people were pumping so much money into social media, and I have did a video on this, that how our teachers, professors, colleagues, and everybody around us are hidden propaganda agents, right? So and I feel so bad about it. And even yesterday I just saw a very disturbing post in the time when people are dying of COVID. So I just saw a very disturbing post, and I said, whatsoever happens, propaganda never stops. So I commented that. So because we choose to be silent. So do you think that the government or the Congress party failed to curb the hate that was there on the social media at that time?
The idea was not to be a policeman. You don't want to be a policeman. You want to really promote truth. The basic problem is social media itself. See, the social media business model is based on number of clicks. More people click, more money you make as social media company. So your agenda is to indirectly promote lies.
So because in 21st century, the currency is not money, the currency is time, love, happiness, I feel, sir. And I feel that a person like you who's given me his time is the biggest currency for me, sir. And you say that's not...
To know what you do and keep doing what you do. You're a young man, you're a smart person, you're a good looking person. So keep at it. And
I will take your quote in my matrimonial profile, sir. I'm a good looking person.
Guaranteed. You can tell people you are good looking. You're a good looking guy, you're a young guy, of course. You're a doctor, and I'm surprised you are still not married.
Yes, sir. I'm young, sir.
Okay. Good.
Sir, surely India needs you again, and in this time many roles and the many unedited version of you, because I was reading articles and there was one article which said that will Sam be able to do it again, right? So I hope you have seen so many articles, right? And you came twice to India and you brought drastic change. I think there is no only two innings, there is a third inning to you. And
my friend, thank you for your generous comments. But I'm 79. Remember, though I feel like you at 30, but I have limitations.
Yeah,
see, I would rather see people like you to lead, and I'll be so happy to have 50 people like you. Okay, identify that for me. Maybe you can help me.
Work for you. I will do that work for you, sir.
Identify 100 people like you. I need them.
Okay, sir.
Okay, that's your task.
Okay.
Okay, if you want to pay me back for this interview, identify 100 people like you, and we'll all have a 1 hour conversation.
Yes, sir. Yes, I will take on this task and I will try my best, sir. And
good.
Thank you very much again. So, thank you very much, sir, for the namaste.